We are live at the Local in downtown Minneapolis on Nicollet Mall. I'm Jim Souhan. My guest tonight, Michael Russo of the Star Tribune. I think he writes a little bit of hockey. We're also here. We're here with Tim Mahoney, the great local musician. He's going to join us mid-show for a little bit of a musical interlude, I think they call them. You can listen to the show at SouhanUnfiltered.com. You can subscribe for free at iTunes, or you can listen via iHeartRadio. Michael, what the hell are you going to do with yourself for the next 4 months?
I don't know. I was just talking to Aaron there about going to maybe, I don't know, getting on vacation.
You don't take vacation. Oh, I guess you do. You travel. I mean, you kind of work when you're on vacation, but you do travel. So where are you going to go?
I was talking about Australia. I was maybe, you go to Australia, you can come back through Hawaii. This is the fantasy I woke up with this morning.
Are you actually going to do this?
I don't know. I was just talking to my golf pro over there. I also hired a golf pro since we last talked.
It's not a good paying job, by the way.
And then, I don't know. We're talking about Vegas, talking about Palm Springs. I got to probably get out of here and just kind of unwind a little bit.
And now, remind me of the story. I believe you had interviewed at the Star Tribune or recently been hired, and you're in Europe, and some news broke, and you had to go
to a coffee shop. Yeah,
so you were writing...
it was what happened was it was the 2004-05 lockout. Man, you have a good memory. I remember. I think.
What was your name again?
Yeah, I think I told you this story when we were sitting at that Greek restaurant when we.
That's right.
When you first interviewed me, Jim, and so it was right at what happened is the way that things go. You book a Europe trip well in advance. You don't know when the lockout's going to end. So I booked it mid-July or late July, thinking that hey, I'm completely safe, and what happened was the lockout ended right before. So my editor, who you knew, Brian White, said you can still go, and I went, and the lockout ended. And the first thing that happened was that the Florida Panthers signed Joe Nieuwendyk and Gary Roberts. It was immediately after the lockout ended, and there was no tampering there.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, there's no way Mike Keenan worked that out in advance. And so I was in Rome, and it was one of these weird things where I could call out on my BlackBerry, but nobody could call me. And so I left a message for both Joe Nieuwendyk and Gary Roberts, and so my convoluted voicemail to Joe Nieuwendyk was, I'm in Rome, you can't call my BlackBerry, but here's a number of a coffee shop I'm at. And I gave him 20-digit phone number. I hang up, and I'm sitting there at one of the desktops there at the coffee shop working on the story, and all of a sudden I hear this Italian guy screaming in the background, is there a Michael Russo here? And I'm like, yeah. And I get on the phone, and it's Joe Nieuwendyk calling me long distance from Canada in Rome. I mean, that, to me, from that point on, I'll never forget that. I've told him the story 50 times. Just right away I knew what kind of class act he was. And it was pretty cool, writing that from Europe.
So the story of the week is the Patriots penalty and Tom Brady's 4-game suspension. And you just mentioned tampering in the NHL. Everything that happens that touches the NFL feels like a big deal. It feels momentous, and especially when you're dealing with Super Bowl winners and a great quarterback. What's the hockey equivalent? What's the hockey?
Well, the Blackhawks deflated the pucks in this series. That was very clear.
I'm such a
you saw that puck hop right over Pominville's stick and Ryan Suter's stick on the swing. I mean, they clearly deflated pucks. What's the hockey equivalent?
There are no great hockey scandals. Baseball and football
there really
isn't.
Scandals. Yeah, I mean,
does anybody cork their stick in the NHL?
No.
Do you think?
Am I thinking of an obvious one?
I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think NHL players take steroids or some kind of performance-enhancing drug?
I really don't. I don't think that. I don't see why it would help you in the NHL.
It makes you faster, stronger.
It is
quicker.
interesting. The couple guys that have been, quote unquote, caught in the NHL all played for the Wild. Sean Hill happened before he got here when he was with the Islanders, and then there was the ridiculous one with Jose Theodore, and it turned out to be Propecia, and he got off.
That's my kind of performance-enhancing drug.
That is mine.
Hair gel.
That is mine. I just got a haircut about an hour before we came here, and the entire haircut. I was complaining to the hairstylist about my thinning hair, and then she pretty much,
cut more.
Yeah, she just told me to leave.
They're not very helpful, actually.
Yeah. So,
well, let's.
Am I forgetting? I feel like I'm forgetting an obvious one, an obvious scandal in the
has point
NHL.
Shaving, and you know that guys like, certain body types, they're taking performance-enhancing drugs. It's just the NBA doesn't really care that much. NFL, steroid-ridden, cheaters. Belichick's a cheater. The Patriots are cheaters. Baseball, steroids, scuffing baseballs, sharpening spikes, corked bats. I mean, spitballs. Everybody cheats, and then you look at hockey, and nothing ever comes out. Right? There's got to be somebody's got to be cheating in some way, but it's just human nature.
No, I don't know about cheating, but it definitely has its problems. I mean, I'm telling you, this sleeping pill, painkiller thing is, to me, epidemic in the NHL, and I think it's very clear that these guys are just giving it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hard not to get hooked. And I've talked to players, off the record about it for years, that this is a big time problem that's got to be stopped. But no, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of,
well, tell me more about the sleeping pill thing.
Well, I think that it is. I think these guys, they get on a plane at midnight. They got to play the next day. They fly to a next city. I think they take Ambien and things like that. They hand it out to each other. I'm told on planes. I mean, that was the big thing with Derek Boogaard, is that, after, his teammates didn't know that he wasn't supposed to be taking this, so he'd get on a plane and just be like, hey, can I get an Ambien? And nobody would think twice about it and just give him an Ambien or things like that. But I think painkillers is just, again, something these guys play in pain and they take it. And part of also hockey and all sports is you go out and you have a pop or drink afterwards. And it just, all the little things add up to potential addiction. And I think that is 100% what happened to Derek Boogaard. What's bizarre about the whole Boogaard thing, and I say this, by the way, knowing that is today May 12th?
It is.
So that means 4 years tomorrow is the anniversary of his death, which is amazing. But I remember when he, the story goes where he first became addicted when he had shoulder surgery, and it was the day... he had shoulder surgery the day of Doug Riseborough's press conference. The day of Doug Riseborough's press conference for after he was fired. So it would have been 2009, April of 2009. And all of a sudden I'm walking out of Tom Reed's where the press conference was. So this would have been about probably a week after Doug was fired. And all of a sudden, this SUV pops up to me, and Derek's ex-fiance, Erin Russell, was driving, and it's Derek in the driver's seat, in the passenger seat, and he goes, Mike. I go over, I'm like, it's Boogaard. I knew he was having shoulder surgery that morning. He's got his arm in a cast and all this stuff, and he's out the window. And he goes, can you get Reiser for me? And I'm like, yeah. And I go in there, and remember, Reiser wasn't a fan of mine at that point.
Right.
I go in and Reiser, and you can tell he's kind of being cold to me. I'm like, hey, Boogaard's outside to talk to you. And I kind of followed Doug out there, and it was Boogaard telling Doug, just thank you for everything. You're the reason why I'm in the NHL. I just wanted to, just tell you this. And this is an hour after he had woken up from anesthesia. But it was that shoulder surgery that where he really first started getting addicted to painkillers. I mean, it's pretty much documented from that point on. And then all summer, I remember talking to him all summer long, him getting over the surgery and things like that. And by the end of the summer, man, it was pretty much on. I mean, he was... I don't remember if it was that summer or the August after where he showed up at the Wild. He showed up at the State Fair to pose in the Wild third jersey. And I mean, obviously in hindsight, I know now, but it was like he was just in another world. He was cold. He was just... I can't explain it. Like, I went up to him. Yeah, it was the first time I seen him all summer, and after talking to him all summer too. And I went up to him, and there was just nothing. It was just like, and turns out that was the day also that they found him sleeping. A cop that knew him found him sleeping in his car and called Chuck Fletcher up. So this actually might have been 2009. It might have been the same summer. And that's when they first sent him to rehab and all that stuff. I mean, it was, I think it was that. It would have been 09 or 10. I can't even remember when he left here. So it might have been 10. Yeah.
Do you think those kinds of problems, the concussion epidemic in hockey, will be lessened by the fact that there are now fewer goons, fewer fights?
I don't know. I mean, there's concussions in hockey are just, it's something it happens. It's a hard-hitting, very fast sport. I agree with you that you don't see the stage fights or any fights anymore in terms of bare-knuckled punches to the head. So maybe that will help in the long run. But I do still think that this is a sport where, it's just, I love the fact that the NHL is trying to finally get away with the headshots that should have been gone a long time ago. But, it might become lesser, but I still think that it is just it's something that's going to happen in this fast sport. I mean, we saw today where Steve Monador, Bill Gibbs, who is the attorney who I've spoken to a couple times, is the attorney that represents the Boogaard estate, is now representing the estate of Steve Monador, who just committed suicide recently and was also diagnosed with CTE, the brain disease that also Derek had as well. And they are going to sue the NHL and basically say that this is that concussions are what led to the depression that led to Steve sadly passing away. And of course the league has already come out and said they don't buy into the allegations. And this is something that is, we see the huge concussion lawsuit going on that's based here in Minnesota. And it's going to continue as all pro sports are going to have to, basically, I don't know if protect their players is one. Because I also have two feelings on that. I mean, you are playing a contact sport, and, to me, you know what you're getting into. But I also think that it's very important that teams protect their own players. You saw that one play where Marco Scandella hits Corey Crawford in the helmet. His helmet pops off. He has to go to the bench. He looked like he was woozy the way that he fell afterwards. We were both there for that, right, in Chicago. Yep. And yet, he's still in there at the end. There is a concussion protocol now in the NHL where you're supposed to technically go to a dark room, but it's up to the teams to be cognizant there and to get him into that dark room, even if it's the starting goalie. And there was a case where the Blackhawks clearly didn't. So there needs to be some sort of responsibility upon the teams in the league, but I also think the players have to be cognizant in themselves.
All right, it's hard to transition away from a topic that serious, but I do want to have some fun with this show.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If we thought about that, I probably would be more able to communicate better.
No,
but it did. I mean, it just popped in my head tomorrow's May 13th.
It's important stuff, and it's very interesting. From
I could
your
talk about that Boogaard thing for.
And you and I have in the past. Let's let you spread your wings a little bit here. One of the interesting things about your life is you end up being friends with the guy in the Book of Mormon. You end up being friends with people who are writers of the Daily Show.
Yep.
I think Book of Mormon is just in Chicago. Daily Show people are coming here for this weekend, I think. Your buddies, for a while, your buddies with Adam Duritz. Now you've Traveled by Turtles, following you on Twitter. How do you get to know these people? And who?
I don't know.
And you know them well?
Yeah,
or they just Twitter
I mean,
friends?
Dave Larson, who's the lead in Book of Mormon, he's Elder Price. He's a good friend of mine. He's one of his good friends is my best friend. One of my best friends, this guy David Reeser, who's married to Casey Levy, who's in Hair and Les Mis and Ghost and everything. I mean, Wicked. So that's how I met Dave Larson. So you got to meet him in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And then his same guy, Dave Reeser, is how I'm friends with Adam Lowett, who's the executive producer of Daily Show. So they're coming here. Adam Lowett and the writers of Daily Show are coming here this Saturday. They're playing at I think it's the Bravo Workshop or something down here.
The Brave New World.
Okay,
Shop.
I am. There we go.
Which is not far from here.
Yeah, so they're here Saturday night, so I'm going to that stand-up act. All the writers from Daily Show, and then my buddy I think is headlining, and I'm excited for that. He's a good friend, and it is coincidental that you mentioned the guy from Book of Mormon because that's how I know all of them. I went to summer camp with Adam Lowett. He's the EP of Daily Show. His dad was Bruce Lowett, former sports writer. Worked for the either the Tampa Tribune or St. Pete Times. Was covered backup Lightning when I was down there. And then he is from New York. He covered everything from the Yankees to. It was funny this past November. You would have loved this. I went with Greg Wyshynski from Yahoo, his wife, and Frank Brown and John Delapina from the NHL offices. We went to the Daily Show. Bruce Springsteen was the guest. And after the show, we went up to Adam's office and talking, and all of a sudden, Frank Brown, who was a columnist for the Daily News for years, I happened to mention that his dad was a sports writer, and Frank's like, not Bruce Lowett, and it turned out to be that he worked with Bruce. So
beautiful.
It's a small world. And Trampled by Turtles, I don't know how. I've just started following them on Twitter, and they followed me, and I'm a huge fan of theirs. So I'm excited to see them a couple times in a concert this summer.
We do have a few people here, including Tim Mahoney. So instead of going to Twitter questions right away, first of all, let's have Tim step up. I think he had a. Did you have a sports song by Tim Mahoney?
Well, hey, how's it going?
How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Here. Tim Mahoney does a show on the Live and Social Network and carries around his guitar and just shows up in bars randomly. It's very strange.
I do that to try to get girls. I know.
How's it work for you?
Well, I would say
still working at it.
60% of the time, it works all the time.
I like it.
No.
Thank you, Yogi.
I love to play music, so I enjoy that. But like I told you earlier, I actually had a couple sports questions. You thought, because I will tell you right now,
You ask and we'll go find somebody to answer them.
I'm a little bit of a fair weather fan, but the one thing I want to know, and this is a little bit of the comedy aspect, is how come is it we get coaches or we get players, even golf, could be a player or coach. I feel like some of their things when they talk to them after the game or maybe at halftime are always so ambiguous, like stuff like, let me think, a coach says, well, thank you. Yes, we did lose today. We put on our uniforms and, well, we put on the pads too. And we came out in the field because it's the regulation field. And then we played a game called football. And once we looked at the scoreboard at the end, it turned out our score was lower. And then we realized we lost. Now, of course, I'm stretching that. But really what I mean is I feel like it's the same speech. Tiger will get off and he'll say the same thing. Well, you know what? I just wasn't making the putts.
You've noticed this.
Why? I mean, of course, that's it. I mean, I feel like I just want to know a little more. I mean, that's my thing.
That's Souhan's job.
I want to know more.
Is to weed through the bullshit and to write.
These are corporations. These are corporations dressed as human beings who represent 8 companies they endorse,
right,
and really don't want you to know anything about them. That's like 80% of athletes. And really, if you look at it from their perspective, that's probably the safest route. Bearing your soul every time you have a bad day is probably not the way most of us would go about it. But if you're a sports fan or if you're a sports writer, you always want more. You want humanity. And their entire approach is to avoid being human in your eyes.
And that's
I will say my issue with fans that or media that sometimes get on athletes and coaches that actually tell the truth. That's what we want. Like, you don't want what you just said. Like, yesterday I tweeted out a couple quotes from Suter and Vanek that were somewhat critical of the Wild and their power play and the fact that they were so late making adjustments in the season. And I didn't look at my Twitter for a long time, and then I look and I got all these people like ripping into them for it's one thing if you want to be rip into them because maybe they were part of the problem, but ripping them into them for being honest. And I want to be like, what, you want them to give the same politically correct BS? I mean, I think it's good that we're getting honesty.
And that is, because I just wonder, that's my thing, is it's being said so much over and over. And me being someone who isn't as educated, of course, as you guys, even an average sports fan, I do feel like when I hear it, I'm like, oh my God, I swear to God, I heard that same speech with the baseball game or basically with a golfer and Tiger Woods.
Well, and part of it is that a lot of athletes, a lot of coaches, a lot of managers are trying to say nothing. They're trying as hard as they can to say nothing, just move on to the next part of their job. The other part of it is, too, it really, if you step back, it's amazing how much access we have and how much access we demand. I mean, a baseball manager will speak at least twice to the media. And he'll do a local radio. He'll do the local radio network. He'll do a local TV. He'll do a local pregame gathering. He'll do a postgame gathering. And then some guys like me will grab them off to the side, try to get some real stuff out of them after, So, I mean, it's remarkable how much time they spend speaking with the media.
They are very different when they're not in a press conference setting. When you get them on the side, they're very different. They have a public persona now that they,
as we say often in the business, the best stuff is usually off the record. The best stuff is usually the stuff you can't use, or you kind of guide them down that conversation. It's off the record. And
do they tell you that sometimes? They go, "We just said that. Don't use that at all." sue you.
If it's done properly, they will tell you before they say it that it's off the record.
Right.
I think it would be tough to be a baseball manager because 162 games. To me, it's what you just said is pretty obvious how they won and lost. Our pitching sucked, our hitting was good. I wish we
and often they're trying to
at least in a hockey game. It's a very different story pretty much every game. There's certain players that are either going to be good or bad every single game. Where in baseball, I just think it's so obvious what happened that it would be tougher for the manager to say something
And that's
different.
a good point. I'll just take for one.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. And I covered a lot of bad Twins teams where the story is the same every night. They lost 8-3 because the starting pitcher sucked.
Yeah.
And that's the story. But it's our job to try to make it sound more interesting than that, or to try to find the one guy in the clubhouse who might say something interesting afterward.
Yeah, and my other thing, kind of connecting to that, is also, I just feel like, especially local teams, but I'm sure it's every city, is, and I'm not sure, I'm not feeling for them when they're doing bad, but I just feel like I know the Star Tribune. I'm not necessarily saying writers, but it was whenever players, they're playing good. I mean, we're just all over of like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. They have a bad game. I know you guys know all about this stuff, and then people just shred them. Now, again, me being someone not as educated, I just read this as kind of a general person. I'm like, really give these guys a little bit of a break. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying that I'm being a baby or something, but they get it hard. I mean, people say music is hard. I'm like, no, athletes get it way harder because it's literally every single game is like this play to like, what are they going to write? Like that they're awesome. Adrian Peterson is awesome. Then he's got Scandal, and now he's shit or whatever. I don't know. And it's like, I don't know. It's tough.
But I think that's the way. It's a daily newspaper. That's the right way to do it. Adrian Peterson was one of the great running backs in history. He should be written about that way. And then he beat a kid, and he should get ripped for that. It should be reacting to whatever's happened lately.
I remember sitting down with a player that was ticked with me over something I wrote in Florida. Ray Whitney was the player, and he was having an incredible season, but he went through a little slump, and I was writing it, and he got all pissed off, and I said, "Look, wait a minute." First of all, you're a professional athlete that is playing 82 games. My job is to write about every single game, and part of the job is you've got to take the good with the bad. I mean, our job is to cover like a book, the chapter from the beginning to the end. And if there's times in the middle, I mean, you're right. I don't think that you have to shred them and be personal and things like that. But part of the job of being a paid professional athlete and having media cover you, which is, by the way, why a lot of them are getting paid, is to take that, is to have it documented.
So you're saying hold them to it. I mean, these guys are the top.
It's not even being accountable. It's reporting what happened. My job.
I'll give you an example. Joe Mauer.
Yep.
I've covered Joe Mauer since he was in high school.
Yep.
I've written 8,500 nice things about him, and I've probably written 7,000 bad things about him, and it was all based on what he was doing. Right. I wrote about him when he was playing like an MVP. I wrote about him like he was the MVP. When he won batting titles,
does he like you as a person, or
we get along? Yeah.
Okay.
I will say this. I read your column yesterday, and what I was most impressed in that column about what Jim wrote is I know his relationship with Joe Mauer. I know how much he respects Joe Mauer. And in the middle of that column, it takes a right turn, and he's criticizing Joe Mauer. And to me, that's the sign of a great columnist.
And it wasn't even it wasn't a personal I pointed out that his OPS right now is at a career low level. That's a fact. It's a fact. And when his OPS was at a career high level, we wrote a million stories about that.
And that's really the interesting part, to bring this all to a close, interesting connection, is, I do an art, right? I make music, like it's paintings or whatever. So, of course, there we lie an opinion. Okay, and that's where that stuff gets really gray, right? Because you guys can rely on facts. Mauer yesterday, this is what he was doing. I get writers that I'll do an interview with that I think are really nice people, and they're really cool to me over the phone. And next thing I know, I'm shredded to pieces because they just didn't like my record, and they liked the Imagine Dragons record way better. And that's okay if they did that. And that's interesting because I always, in my business, my thing is I never trust any writer, so I just try to do all the interviews the same because you just don't know what they're going to write.
It's so funny you said that because my buddy Adam Lowett, who is a comedian, so he meant this as a joke. He goes, he writes me this email the other day, and he goes, he's the guy that's in a Daily Show. He's the executive producer. Coming here to stand up. So Star Tribune did a Q&A with him that's going to be in Thursday's paper. Neil Justin. Mm-hmm. So Neil,
who was a guest on my last podcast, by the way.
He writes. So Adam writes me. He goes, "Hey, I just talked to Neil Justin. Please tell him not to misquote me and destroy my career." But it's funny what you just said, because my job is exactly what you said, right? About I sit there and. I got to write about Zach Parisi, and he's got a family, and if I rip them, they read it, and I don't even think about that. So my buddy, Dave Larson, was the lead in this Broadway musical. He's the guy that's the lead in Book of Mormon. He was in Good Vibrations with my friend Dave Reeser, who I mentioned, who's kind of the link of how I'm friends with all these people. So they were in Good Vibrations together, this very short-lived Beach Boys musical. So the way it works in Broadway is that they have kind of I forget what it's called, but God, what's it called? It's like previews for the critics to come out before everything starts to watch it. So this is before it's really even a refined musical. And they come out, and it gets destroyed by everything. New York Times, New York Post, New York Daily News, everything. Just rips the crap out of it. And I'm reading these reviews the next day, and because I knew the two of them, I was freaking livid. Like, I wanted to call up these writers up and be like, what the... because, I thought it was awesome. But it's, it's a subjective thing.
Well, that's my thing.
But it is an interesting thing, when you're not in that perspective. And here, all of a sudden, Reeser, when I'm telling him, and I'm all pissed about these reviews about the show, and Reeser goes, "You realize that's what you do?" And I'm like, it was this big epiphany that oh my God!
But you're more
friends and family that read what I write and get pissed at me.
But you're more fact based. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. So how about this? Let me play this question. What if you did something more creative? Let's say you, Jim. What if you did something more creative? And you read something that someone ripped you. Say your show was not. I mean, how would you feel about that? What would you?
Every 5 minutes.
Souhan gets
every 5 minutes.
No,
especially at our. Souhan's the one that's ripped to shreds at our paper.
Yeah, I mean, everything I do. Just check my Twitter timeline. Check anywhere. Check comments under this.
Sometimes I read his Twitter timeline and feel better about myself.
I get shredded every day, no matter what I do.
So it doesn't bother you whatsoever, and doesn't get to you. You just say that's part of the gig.
It's just part of the gig.
Yeah.
I will say that I have a thin skin. I got a quick block finger on Twitter. You got to love me or you're gone. No, I'm just kidding. But
actually, that's true.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's an interesting thing. I think you're coming from a perspective too, where it is so subjective. I'm either going to love your music or not like it. Where what we're watching with baseball or hockey, whatever, there are statistics to really back up if you're playing well or not.
And guys like Russo and I are also taught. The funny thing is that a lot of times, fans will get mad when you rip a player, and they won't understand that the entire front office has said the same thing off the record. It's that. I mean,
absolutely.
Usually, by the time we write something, a lot of people in that actual organization, sometimes even teammates, agree with us and might even be telling us, "Hey,
you think the Wild loved the way that Thomas Vanek played this year?
They hate him.
They hate him. They disagree with.
But see, then me as a fair weather, of course, I want to give them credit. I'm going, well, shit, they made it to the playoffs. Give them a fucking break.
Okay,
but it is I just think
55% of the teams make the playoffs.
Okay, well, that's still. I mean,
it would be tougher though. Don't you think?
We praised them a million. We spent 3 months praising them.
That to me, you should.
We spent 3 months writing about how great this is. Then if they lose to the Blackhawks, you have to write about why they lost to the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I mean that's
part
how I
feel.
feel.
The Blackhawks are really good, but that's only part of it.
Yeah. I was just going to tell the story. There's this, I shouldn't even tell the story. But
those are always the best stories.
Yeah, I know.
You stop yourself and then restart.
I actually feel terrible about it. But this lady who sounds like a very elderly lady in town wrote this letter. So that just tells you how elderly she is. Wrote this
letter.
Wrote this letter to me, just ripping into how mean I am to the Wild in my last game story. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I wrote a straight game story, but then it just coincidentally I'm in the office today, which I never am, and she left a 2-minute rambling voicemail to our editors about it too, and I'm just like, oh my God, I just wrote nothing but great things for honestly for 3 months,
I think the difference between...
All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to let Tim sing, and then you and I are going to critique him right to his face.
Well, here's what's so funny, and that's why I won't do this. But I'm going to end on this note. I'm going to make up a song about Jim, and just a small, short one.
I like it.
But here's my thing, is that I do appreciate it, because I just want to say, even though I asked you the questions about it, I told you my view on it is I've been shredded too. So, but I've is understood that that's part of the game. So
if you put anything out in the public, you're going to get shredded by somebody. Yeah. That's just reality.
I know you want to, but like, it's so, I think it would be so tough to be a music critic, because you either love something or you hate it, and if you don't like it, how can you be objective about it? Like, how could, if I am not a fan of yours, but you're playing incredible stuff, how would I don't even know how it'd be possible to write something,
I think that's why,
fair about it.
I think that's why music criticism's a different animal, and I've always thought that. Because the other difference is, if you're an athlete and you have a bad game, if you're an athlete and you have a bad game, you're moving on to the next game, and you can brush that off, and you can even brush criticism of that off. Music, and I know because I play music, and I don't write songs, which is...
You should.
But I try. I'm not any good at it. But music is different. Music, you're pouring your soul into it. It's you.
That's it.
And I think that's the difference. So A, criticism is subjective, because it has to be in music, and B, they're criticizing you because the music is kind of a part of you.
You're right.
That's different.
Yeah, no, and I just mean like... Yeah, I mean, that's the thing we just deal with. I remember I read an article lately about people are saying, the Beatles, they just really weren't that good at musicians, Of course there's people that think that stuff about that, and maybe...
Well, that's crazy shit.
But, well, you're right. That's what I said. But, I mean, what's true? I mean, I listen to a lot of Mozart. I mean, it's just whatever. The point is... So, like I always talk about writers, if they're into one certain kind of music, they're going to rip my kind. Mine's kind of more of a pop thing. So, most likely, they're not going to go, wow, this is the best pop record I've ever heard. I love Miley Cyrus's new single. Now, maybe as a pop thing, it might be one of the best, but he's probably not going to say so. So, we're just going to do a little, do that. Maybe we're going to hold this. We'll sing a little number. Although Jim has way too serious a look on his face as I start this song.
I'm writing down my criticisms, and you haven't even started playing it. I don't like the C. I don't like you starting on a C.
Okay. What? Give me a chord. How about
kidding.
give me a chord and a style of music?
No, I want to hear what you have. You just let it rip.
Okay. I love Jim Souhan and his show. I love all the things he says, I hope it grows. But he's a little fucker. I wanna punch him in his face. He's a little fucker. Joe Mauer wants to punch him in his face. I love Jim Souhan. Anyway, he can write about me any day, I swear. Well, someday Jim Souhan's gonna get kicked in the knees. Walking down the street, he won't even know it when it hit him. Please, he's a sweet-ass guy. 2 hot chicks, 'cause he knows he has to be. And that's what it is. Won't you hear me say, Jim Souhan, Unfiltered is his show. Won't you listen every day? Jim Souhan. Unfiltered, by the way, is the only way to be Jim Souhan.
Can we go back to the 2 hot chicks part? I
feel like that song was all over the place.
It was a little bit. It was a little bit all over the place.
You do play like my guitar. You're going to play an older version of my guitar, but you do play my guitar.
Streets with No Name.
Done. So recently, I don't normally do tribute stuff, but I did for St. Patrick's Day. I did. Why are you doing that? I did a tribute to U2. Now I didn't even call it a tribute. I said Tim Mahoney plays U2. I did one night of all U2. I'm going to do it about 2 more times again this year. But that's the music that I grew up and what made me become a musician. But I'll give you a little sample right here. I want to run, I want to hide, I want to tear down the walls and hold me inside. I wanna reach out and touch the flames, yeah, where the streets have no name. Oh, I wanna feel the sunlight on my face, and I see the dust cloud disappear without a trace. I'll show you a place high on the desert plain, where the streets have no name. Oh, where the streets have no name, where the streets have no name. They're still building this burning town of, burning town of. And when I go there with you. It's all I can do. All I can do. All I can do. Little sample there. Come on now.
As a musician and a sports writer, let me just tell you, that sucked. Absolutely sucked.
I can take it. You know, I've been better.
No, it sounded good. It sounded really good. I like the sound of your guitar.
He goes, I like the sound of your guitar. I'm actually a singer for a living.
Take that any way you want to.
Yes, I'm playing a Gibson 1965 guitar, and the thing that Souhan said is, wow, I love your guitar. You should be a guitar player.
He's a guitar.
I know he is.
You
know what we should do?
I barely saw him in Chicago. I was lucky that he came to the games.
Oh, went
he was
to Chicago Music Exchange. Checked out. Have you ever been there?
Yep, I have.
God. Like 8,000 vintage guitars. Carlos Gonzalez, a photographer from our paper, a great photographer, and I.
Who's in your band?
Who's in my
band.
Wretches. We went out.
Have you ever played a song on the show, by the way?
No.
Okay.
No.
Guessing that's not going to happen.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Maybe someday.
Why not?
Maybe someday when we have the band in the same place as the podcast. We'll
okay, so no. I think it should happen.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Keep going the story. Chicago.
I can't remember the
Chicago.
Oh, a music shop that we went to, and we wanted to sleep there.
Yeah.
And I played like 800 guitars that weekend. It was awesome.
It was awesome. My favorite place, Kingston Mines, Chicago Blues. I mean, I've gotten up. Just you hold this for a second. I mean, I've gotten up and played with some of the best blues bands. I sing this on The Voice. If you ever you're changing your mind, ooh, about leaving me behind. And won't you bring it to me? You bring all your sweet loving, bring it out home to me, yeah. Who sang that song, Jim? And Too Much Dead Air.
I can't remember. I'm blank.
It's not the easiest one because it wasn't the number one hit. And actually, that's the reason why I got in an argument with Mark Burnett, the head of the reality show, The Voice, because he said, don't play this song, no one's going to know it. It's a Sam Cooke song. And Sam Cooke is actually someone that, believe it or not, a lot of people don't know his name. It's like, Darling, You Send Me, or Twist in the Night, so many hits.
Yep.
But a song that I just felt close to and wanted to do and that kind of stuff. So
you were on The Voice? You tried out, or?
I was on the show. I was on Adam Levine's team. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep, I was on the first season.
Okay, that's awesome.
You should know that.
I know.
I'm kidding.
I got to tell you, I've never seen The Voice.
I am more than that as a person. That's right. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Appreciate it, Tim. That sounded great.
I liked hearing about sports stuff. Like I said, I like to hear about when people don't know as much about things. Sometimes those are the opinions I want to hear. So sometimes, believe it or not, when I want to hear about a song or a record, I like to hear about people that don't know much about it. And sometimes it's a nice perspective. I don't know. Hopefully it was today. So thanks for having me. Good luck with you. I'm going to bring you on my show, and then we'll get really crazy. And you have to do a song, though.
Okay. I'll work on something.
Work on a song.
I'll do a U2 song.
Okay. I like it. What U2 song would you do?
Still Haven't Found, probably.
Nice.
Have you heard Sean do Streets Have No Name?
I haven't, but he's yelled it loud before.
It's awesome. Honestly.
Sean, have you done that? Yep.
The live karaoke at a
the live karaoke band thing.
He does.
Have you been down to that?
I have not.
Okay.
I mean, the Friday night thing. Yes, I have.
Cool. I got to stop down.
Yeah.
I just believe though karaoke though my thing. I always think karaoke is designed for people that can't really sing good. It's funnier.
I know. And that's the thing is that people.
You're saying Sean can't sing?
No,
good.
I'm telling you, that's the weird part of this karaoke. Is everybody's
good. Weird. It's so weird. You sing good.
Yeah.
It's like when I went to The Voice the first day I showed up, and everybody. I was like, I thought I was like really good, and then I got there to LA, and I was like, huh, everybody's as good or better. So. This should go well for me.
I'm gonna look up all your.
The first guy I met the first day we were singing Sam Cooke together. Well, he won the whole show, so I was like, "Sounds good. We should. Can I get your fax account and we'll just talk through letters and stuff." So, anyways, thanks for having me. Right. I got to head off. I'm actually going to the Rush concert tonight.
Are you?
Yep.
Really?
Nice. They were setting up for it when I was there yesterday. I almost stuck around.
Do you like Geddy Lee's voice?
It's aged like a lot of them, but ultimately, yes. Really interesting thing about the band I love, too, is that the drummer writes the lyrics. They're very complex lyrics. That's why some people call Rush nerd rock, because the people that go to it are normally guys that play like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, because it's intellectual music, but it's also very tough music to play. Don't kid yourself. Those songs are very intense, and not anybody could just say, wow, I'm just going to play a Rush song. You're talking about arguably the best drummer on the planet, Geddy Lee, playing bass and singing and also doing keyboards with his foot, and then Alex playing guitar, which is just an unusual style, and then being a three-piece. Not many actual three-piece bands that are playing with, so like tonight, pipe through stuff, they'll have some keyboards, but Geddy's playing his foot with it. So, that's pretty impressive. Three-piece in a stadium, it's impressive.
You going to Imagine Dragons?
That's funny. I thought you were saying that because I said it earlier.
No, I am. That's why.
Oh, I'm not. No, okay. I do like them. When is it?
Yeah, it's June 6th or something, I think.
Do you got to hook up for tickets or?
I haven't tried.
But maybe you could just. I'll give you my card.
Yeah.
I expect some tickets for some sporting events. Souhan, I'll call you for that.
I can't do anything for you. Trust me, I can't do anything.
Actually, they won't even let you in. They'll be like, that guy is not getting anything.
No, that's another thing is that there's a perception that we're tied in with the local teams. If I want a ticket to a Twins game, I go buy one at the box office like the next guy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of sad. You're kind of a...
No, that's the way it's got to be.
But you're a staple name in the whole thing.
But my job is not to be...
I'll talk to Mahler. I'll get you tickets.
And I can't accept them. That's my point.
You can't accept them?
No, you can't accept stuff from people you cover.
Oh, shit. I'm done with this show. I'll take all kinds of bribes.
We'll take free tickets to your next show, though.
Yes. You will get VIP front row and center, and it'll be me, you, Sean.
That we can accept. We can accept that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me.
Nice,
I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Good luck to you guys. Thanks. Right on.
Nice seeing you again.
And we need to feed the Russo crazies a little red meat here and talk about some straight hockey. Anybody who's here want to come up and ask a question of Russo or me before we go to Twitter for questions? Anyone? Ben, come on. You always have something. Ben, you always have something.
Ben, I know you have something.
If you don't have a question, at least second guessing. Come on. Yeah, I knew it.
First of all, you still employed? Everything good? Yeah. All right, good.
Yeah, I'm not over this. loss. It's just a hockey game. Yeah, I'm avidly cheerleading.
It's an entire hockey season.
I'm blaming your prediction, by the way, so it came true as usual. But I do want to hear your prediction on how this next series will play out, the Hawks and the Ducks.
That's a great question. I have no clue. Honestly, I think the Ducks win. They are big. They are prolific. They could skate. They're deep up the middle. As long as Frederik Andersen plays the way that he did against Calgary, I think they're going to be good. It's going to be a very different series for Chicago than the Wild series. The Blackhawks almost changed their style a bit to almost, counteract exactly. Now their coach is unbelievable and he could adjust, but the way that they played the Wild, I think almost shocked the Wild, and just almost like the way they just sat back and waited and just tried to basically force turnovers in the neutral zone, and then the way they countered and scoring on almost every one, it was unbelievable. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to play that way against the Ducks. The Ducks will get that puck deep and just pound the heck out of you. And my inkling initially is to go with the Ducks in that series. What do you think?
I hope the Ducks. I'm saying the Blackhawks are going to win now, though, with your prediction. How many games, though? What, 6, 5, 6?
I think 6. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question?
Andrew?
Come on up.
This poor guy.
See if that mic works. That'll
This one on?
That's working. Great. Awesome. What do you got?
I'm curious to know what you think if Chris Stewart will be back.
I don't.
Because I think he brings something to the team that they don't have and
I don't
can probably
agree.
use.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
He's a big guy, but he plays soft.
Yeah.
Plays really soft.
Yeah,
So-
he did not. The trade helped because it solidified all the lines, but to me, first of all, he's going to want a lot of money, and he's exactly what Jim just said. I like the guy, but he is not built. He does not do on the ice what he's built to do, and didn't score in the playoffs. Only 3 goals in 20 games during the regular season. I mean, I just think that he didn't prove himself here at all.
I thought he made one good play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
One. And it was along the boards, and he freed up the puck and made an assist, and that was about it. I was
don't
really
think so.
disappointed in him. Anybody else? You ready?
Andrew, poor Andrew here, pro golfer.
Yes. And he was at the Liffey
Travels
last
around
time
the
we were
world.
there.
He tried to qualify. Should I say this or no? Can I say it? Yeah, he had a U.S. Amateur qualifying yesterday and missed by a shot.
Oh,
and
God.
Bogus day,
Oh.
ugly weather, got screwed.
See, of all the professional sports, look, this is actually a good topic because I love talking about this stuff. I get how if you're big and strong and athletic, you can throw a football in a tight spiral to a general area. I get how if you're built like LeBron James, you can dunk and play well at basketball. I get if you have hand-eye coordination, you can get a hit now and then in baseball. Golf is the one sport that discombobulates me, if I may use that word. I don't know how you guys compete over courses that long and that tough. I don't know how you deal with the stress of knowing that any putt missed by a quarter of an inch could end up costing you whatever, a trophy or a cut line or a paycheck. I don't know how you guys do it. Golfers, to me, are the most incomprehensible athletes. I don't know how you play that game at that level under that pressure with no help.
I think that's why we enjoy it.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess you have to embrace it to be able to do it well.
You don't really. I think that the toughest thing about it is that you lose all the time.
Right.
I mean, if you win 10% of the tournaments that you play, you'll be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean
that's incredible too.
And look at the list of guys who finished second the most. It's Jack Nicklaus, it's Tiger Woods,
Yeah.
it's guys. I mean, sometimes I always have to remind myself when I'm covering a golf tournament, don't write about the second place guy like he lost. He didn't lose. He finished second out of 300 guys or 200 guys.
And that's considered if, you were down to the final couple holes and you choked.
Right.
Well, you just played 72 holes and finished second in the tournament. And
if you're Greg Norman and you're the best player in the world and you have a big lead and you start hitting into the water when you haven't been hitting into the water previously, I'm sorry, that is a choke. But if you just miss one shot and lose, that's not choking, that's golf.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that Jack Nicklaus has a quote talking about how you have to learn to love the bad breaks. That's really what it is. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've missed putts because there's a spike mark and you can't fix a spike mark and stuff like that, or you get a bad
Which
bounce.
is a stupid rule, by the way.
That should be like the Wild's new
spike marks.
No, that should you got to love to
love the bad
you got to
breaks.
learn to love to bad breaks. That should be the Wild's new
trademark. It's part of the game.
trademark.
You have to embrace it, and you really do. And I think that I guess it's something that Yo always says is you can't feel sorry for yourself, but you really, you can't sit there and be like, oh, have a why me attitude. Okay, well, we'll deal with it and move on. And you're not the only person.
Like yesterday, did you second guess a lot of things? I mean, were you replaying things all day?
Not really. I got off to a poor start. I was 3 over after 2 holes, which is never any good, and then ended up turning even par, which was fine and kind of right where I wanted to be, and then. It was just a tough day. Weren't making a lot of birdies out there. Just the way tough to kind of judge how the ball was flying, being that cold, and it's tough to gauge yardages and couldn't really get anything going, I guess, on the back nine either. So, get off to a little bit of a better start, because the low score yesterday was 70. I shot 72, but there was, I think, 5 guys that go out of 85. So I missed by a shot, but it was only 2 shots between first and tied for 6th. So I don't really like 18-hole qualifying at all, because somebody can just have a good day and that's it. Usually they do 36 holes in one day, which I prefer, because I think that it brings out the better player. And then obviously over 72 holes, the more golf you play, the better players are going to come out. You can't have one.
So why is it only 18 yesterday?
So the U.S. Open qualifying, the way they do it, they have like U.S. Open local qualifying, which is pretty much every state has 1 or 2 qualifiers, and then you go to regionals, which is there's probably maybe 8 sites, and the one that I would have gone on to after this is it's in Ohio right after Jack's tournament, and it's the best one to go to because there's the most spots, but there's also a bunch of PGA Tour guys that play it that aren't already qualified for the U.S. Open. So that one's 36, but the local is always 18. But like U.S. amateurs have always 36 holes, U.S. juniors are always 36 holes. I'd rather play 36 holes.
Okay, so we've grilled you enough. You get to ask one of us a question now.
Yeah, I guess. Well, what do you think about Eastern Conference then, going into it?
I think the Rangers are going to win tomorrow. I think the Lightning are going to pull this off tonight. We'll see. I mean, I picked the Rangers to win the Cup. I don't want to change now, but I really like Anaheim right now. I mean, they've played 9 games in the playoffs so far. They're just they're the most rested, healthy team in the league right now, and they're just rolling. And but if the Rangers come out of if the Rangers pull this off tomorrow, I'll definitely pick them against Tampa, just because that's what I did. That would be the only thing. As bad as I've done with the Wild, I did pick the Rangers Tampa in the Eastern Finals, and I would probably stick with the Rangers. But I don't know. This Anaheim team is pretty good, but we'll see.
Any other questions?
What's that? Yeah, but then but I mean, the way this team they've won 8 out of 9. You know, I mean, I really like the way that they're playing right now. I mean,
what about going into
and I mean, to get back to that, the Wild didn't even compete in this series. I mean, they could pretend that they lost 3-1 goal games and each game could have gone either way. I've watched the entire second round of the playoffs. There was no fight from the Wild. That's what's so disappointing. 0 fight. I mean, I've watched 3 of the games over again since the playoffs ended. I mean, the amount, if I was Mike Yeo and I saw right now the amount of checks that weren't finished compared to every other game I'm watching, I would call these players back in for a second exit meeting. I mean, everybody from Koivu down to fourth liners. The amount of checks that weren't finished by the Wild in this series are absolutely unacceptable. It's like they weren't even playing the playoffs this series. I get the whole thing that there's not a hate for the Chicago Blackhawks and it's a different style. Watch the games again, Ben. It's unbelievable. Like, watch it compared to Anaheim, Calgary, or Washington Islanders, or Washington Rangers. I mean, honestly, I didn't even realize it when I was watching it, until I watched these other series, and that's what made me do it yesterday. I started watching the condensed versions of 3 of the games, and it is unbelievable the amount of checks the Wild didn't finish. Like, almost on every shift, I would say there were 5 or 6 checks that just were not finished by everybody, from Parisi down the line. Anyway.
And, tell me if I'm wrong. I thought the Wild has the great 3-month stretch. They come out, they whip the Blues pretty easily. They play really good hockey. They're very fired up. They go to Chicago for game 1. They give up 3 goals. They fight back, score 3 goals in a row. It's happening again. They're playing great again. And Dubnyk gives up the floater, and they lose the game. And I thought that deflated this team, and maybe it shouldn't have.
Yeah,
but I think it deflated
but you know
this
what?
team.
I don't know if you remember the tweet that I probably sent right before that goal. The Wild went, after they tied it on the Granlund goal at 9:30 of the third, they went like 8 minutes without a shot. So it's like they also took the foot off the gas.
Right.
It's like they were, the jubilation of rallying, it was like they stopped again. Or maybe it was the timeout that Quenneville scored, that call that got everything calmed down for their point. But they did change. I'm not disagreeing with you that it was a horrible goal. And you're right. I mean, if they get out of that game tied, that period tied, they might win that game, and it changes the complexion of the series. I always think when you're the road team that it is so important to win game one. It changes the entire series. It gives you all the confidence in the world. And we saw it in the Blues series. Wild won game one, played well enough to win game two, didn't win game two, but came home, won game three. And then obviously a sign of a pretty good team is the fact that after a 6-1 loss, that you could recover with back-to-back wins. But we didn't see that against Chicago. I mean, it is. I don't know if they ran out of gas or what it was. If the 4 or 5 day break, actually hurt them rather than starting it right away. But it was not the same team that we saw against the Blackhawks. But the Blackhawks are closers, man. Those guys. It might be tough for them to get up for an 82 game schedule, but man, when they want to turn it on in the playoffs, they know how to do it. They got the ultimate playoff performer of our time in Patrick Kane, and as good as Taves is, Taves and Koivu almost offset each other, but they've got so much more talent. What's up? It's just I don't know. And I will say, you look at. We all want to, and I think it's justifiable to rip into Koivu for his lack of production against the Blackhawks, but the last 3 seasons. But Taves isn't a ton better, and it's because they kind of offset each other. But the problem is that the Blackhawks have 15 other guys that can kill you.
And that's why I didn't pick on Koivu too much this series. I thought it was more on Vanek to score. He had better matchups and didn't produce.
You're right, 100%. I mean, disappointment, and he made 2 really bad mistakes in games 1 and 2 that really turned the game around in both those games. And, same thing. If they get out of that second period down 1-0, it's a different game. They might rally in the third, especially the amount of times the Wild they won 8 games in the third period this year after trailing. It could have been a totally different game, but then you give up a goal to Kane with 19 seconds left. It's just, it can't happen.
Got another one?
Yeah, well, going into the next few years, knowing that we'll play the Blackhawks quite a bit, and what moves do you think are even possible to make, knowing that we have some veterans locked in and then not really a whole lot in Iowa either?
I will say I haven't written my kind of season-ending blog yesterday, but, I could never get Chuck alone yesterday. But he did make one thing clear when was on the side. We got him on a side session, and I kind of said to him, "You're veterans. Are they all locked in no trades?" And he said there's windows with each of them. Meaning that each no trade is written differently. And unfortunately, in the NHL, you don't get to read these contracts. So I'll have to do some legwork to try to figure out what the windows are for different guys. But there is, as the reason why, we're all saying that it could very well be the same team next year is because all the guys that are on long-term deals that we assume are untradeable. But there's just no way that behind the scenes that Chuck Fletcher is not going to at least look into moving some of these veterans. And I'm even thinking Mikko. I mean, this is 3 years, $22 million that he's got to go. Otherwise he's, he might be untradeable now, but, there's going to come a point where he's totally untradeable. Pominville, Vanek, there's no doubt he's going to try. It's just whether or not he can get it done. So while he's saying, everybody's back, we're locked into this team, he's saying it also because he knows how tough it is. But I don't buy that there's not going to be some sort of fireworks this summer at some point. They're not going to go out and sign some crazy free agent. But it wouldn't shock me if they even tried to move Granlund. If they looked at, as I said the other day, Spurgeon will not. This is it. He will not either be here at the end of this summer or at the end of next summer. There's just, if you look at the way the team is and how much money he's going to want and a long-term deal, the fact that he's an RFA, this is very much setting up like a Cal Clutterbuck type trade. The question is, the thing with Clutterbuck is that happened on the summer of his RFA year, which is next year for Spurgeon. But it could, if the Wild really want to go get a goal scorer this year, they might look at moving him now. And so, I just think that that's a very likely thing. I just think at some point, likely around the draft, we are going to start to see something big. The other thing with Granlund that they're going to have to really pay attention to is that, there is a chance that somebody could sign him to an offer sheet after July 1. And so, that's something that they're going to have to be cognizant of to not get themselves in that situation unless you're going to get a ton of draft picks back. So, I don't buy that there's not going to be something bold done this summer because what we just saw is real. They're not close to the Blackhawks. That wasn't just, you don't lose 4 games and just say it could have gone either way. I mean, I'm sorry, it just doesn't. So Chuck Fletcher knows that, and it's just a matter of can it happen?
All right, let's do a couple of quick hit. Thank you for the questions. Appreciate it. Good to see you again. Let's do a couple of quick hit Twitter questions. Can you do quick hit?
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
You don't think I have the ability?
Doc, do you see Bruno back as the power play coach again next year?
I think so.
Okay. From Eyes on Vandy.
Just because of the amount of respect that those guys have for him.
Right.
But it would take a lot of balls by them to just say, you're gone. Or maybe they reassign him or something like that. But
and I haven't gotten a ton of... I'm having trouble finding...
You know what I want to talk to you on the next podcast is kind of what... is what you think of the whole flocking around the locker room and just scrums from our perspective. You never...
It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean,
it's horrible.
I could go on and like this. And the reason why I say this is here's a example where I would have loved to have asked that question, but you never get alone time anymore in today's day and age. You just flock like cattle to, all right, Miko's here, 15 people around Miko. Okay, here's Yo, 25 people around Yo. It's just...
And that's
and
one
you're
of
all
the
writing the same things. And
that's one of the things I love about baseball is you can talk to people one-on-one. Not as much as you used to be able to, but you can talk to people one-on-one. Even the Vikings, there are ways you can get somebody, even a star, alone. And that's the way I usually do my interviews. But hockey world, it's always 20 people around the star.
Yesterday it was just impossible to get that stuff. So my hope is to... Some of these questions, I mean, that's a great question. That one I'd love to answer, truthfully and accurately at some point because... But I still don't buy this is all a Bruno thing. I think this is the 5 guys on the ice thing. I mean, you guys have combined. Is this a quick hit? Is this considered a quick hit?
This is not a quick hit anymore. This is more of a solo.
The 5 guys on the number 1 power play unit combined for $50 million. Score a goal.
Now, that was a quick hit. I like that last sentence. That could have been the whole thing, in fact. Eyes on Vandy. By Christmas, is Dumba playing top 4 minutes the blue line?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the playoffs, they were all around that. There were times where he was playing 17 to 20 minutes. I don't think you want to, I don't think it's a bad thing to have 22, 21, 20, and even minutes, and that's what they're going to be hoping to get to eventually. But we all got to remember that Dumba is technically entering his 2nd year next year. He's going to be 21 in July. So all of a sudden, I'm not saying again. I know I just said that they might look at trading Spurgeon eventually, but to all of a sudden think that Dumba, who, by the way, was not good in the Chicago series defensively, is just a finished product right now. I think that we all got to know that we just watched Derek Halla. There's going to be growing pains here. He might even wind up in the minors at some point again. This isn't a superstar yet.
Last one, and then we're going to wrap up this edition of Souhan Unfiltered. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and sending Twitter questions. Top 5, well, actually, this won't be the last one, because I'm going to ask you one after this. Top 5 prospects. And the way it was phrased from Eyes on Vandy is after Graovac and Olofsson.
After Graovac and Olofsson? Alex Tuck, 1.
It can be unsigned guys, too.
Yeah, he's unsigned. Alex Tuck, probably Louis Belpedio, Adam Gilmore. I wish I had a list in front of me.
That's all right. That's close enough.
I mean, I wouldn't say Mario Lucia at all. Maybe a lot of a guy that I'm getting a lot of really positive stuff hearing about is this Avery Peterson who played at UNO. That was the Mr. Hockey, I believe, from Grand Rapids High School. He was a superstar. A lot of people are saying that he has a chance of being a steal. That's one that I'm hearing. Adam Gilmore they love, by the way. This Labby kid is awesome. They like him a lot. And then who's the defenseman up at Minnesota Duluth? They like a lot too. I forget his name.
I don't know. So we'll figure that out by next podcast. All right, let's wrap things up here. Thanks to everybody who showed up. Yeah,
Susie.
Thanks to everybody who showed up. Thanks to everybody who sent Twitter questions. Final question: going into next year, what should the Wild be expected to do?
In terms of moves or in terms of where they go?
Finish.
I think they should. I think their goal again should be. We've all looked at this year as the mumps, and then the injuries, and then the sorrow that obviously Parisi and Suter were feeling in the first half as being a big reason, and then obviously the bad goaltending is a big reason why this team fell apart in the first half. and that maybe the second half team was the real team, and if you put that on pace, this team could have had home ice and maybe even won the division, right? So let's see it. If there's no adversity at the beginning of next year, which obviously there's always adversity, but if you're going in with a clean slate and there's no, they're not given the plague or there's the measles or some other problem that's going on with the team. I think their expectation should be a team that competes for the division win, gets home ice, and goes in the playoffs and hopefully wins a couple rounds at a minimum. I mean, this is a team that was a good team in the second half with incredible goaltending, and that should be the expectation going into next year. But there's got to be moves that are made. I mean, this is obviously I think this was an eye opener for Chuck Fletcher, that the veterans are on the decline, and that maybe the kids aren't going to be as dynamic as he thought. And that's why I think they're going to be doing something bold this summer. They could use Granlund as that piece. They could use Spurgeon, or we could see them try to dump some veterans in some way. I really think they should look at Yakubov here. I think you could get him in a Spurgeon deal. I think that Edmonton would be into something like that the way they need D. I know this team doesn't have a history of trading for Russians, but I think that's the type of move that if you're going to eventually trade Spurge, that's the type of move that would be worth the risk. There's a former number 1 overall pick that has clearly skill that just didn't work there, and to get him that young, it wouldn't be. I think they should look at it. I know that sometimes they roll their eyes that way, but I think that's something they should look at.
Great stuff, Michael. Thank you. That's Michael Russo. I'm Jim Souhan. This is SouhanUnfiltered.com. You can always listen via that website, via iTunes with a free subscription. We'll deliver the show to your inbox via iHeartRadio. Thanks, Timmy. Thanks, Tim Mahoney, for stopping by and playing music for us. We appreciate it. Next show tomorrow night at the Liffey with Viking Update editor Tim Yoder. He knows the ins and outs of the Vikings roster like nobody. We're going to get deep into the draft, into the Vikings' future. And as is the case at all Cara pubs, the first 50 people to show up and retweet something about the show will get a free Guinness, just like the ones we have in front of us right now. Thanks, y'all, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.